So today in this session, in the last class itself, I told you that hereafter we'll be introducing a number of writers and their works. Okay, which no, those writers on whom we have to give the focus. Definitely, we will explain. But there are, of course, so many writers who were not that popular, but at the same time they are important and their works are to be acknowledged. So those kinds of writers will be acknowledged in this particular class, in this session. Okay. So of course there are some important figures and we will explain those writers in detail. And we'll start with John Webster. I think we have done till Marston, right? Yes, I guess. Haywood, Decker, and John Marston. Okay, till Marston we have covered in the last class, I guess. And here we'll start with John Webster. John Webster is one of the important figures during that time, and still in the 20th century, there are many writers, there are many critics who focus on John Webster's writing style and what kind of, pattern, the macabre tragedy that means macabre tragedy means focuses exclusively on death. Death is the major theme. Okay, that's how Webster wrote many of his works. So but though they are very bloody, very violent and all those things, it's full of violence, tragedy and such things. Webster's plays are like that, but still they have their own importance even in the 20th century. Actually, considering his personal life, the details of the life is actually are obscure. We don't know exactly what kind of a personal life we had, and he had so many collaborations. Actually, hereafter, those writers whom we'll be discussing, mostly they have written in collaboration with others. Okay, that's why they are lacking an independent identity as a writer, and that's why we are considering them not like very major or popular writers. And these are the writers with whom John Webster collaborated, that is William Rowley, Thomas Middleton, John Fletcher, John Ford, Philip Massinger. Actually, all these writers are important or prominent writers during that time, and Webster collaborated with them and produced so many works. Webster is exclusively known for his two famous macabre revenge tragedies, and one is The White Devil, and second one is The Duchess of Malfi. Both these works are very important. Very important. You have to identify these works with the credit of John Webster. Okay, The White Devil as well as The Duchess of Malfi. Duchess of Malfi is comparatively more popular, and the characters, the Duchess, of course, the main character is like the Duchess, and the spy Bosola, then Ferdinand and Cardinal, the villain brothers of the Duchess. So if possible, you can have a glance on the detailed summary of the Duchess of Malfi. It is simultaneously interesting as well as violent. In a nutshell, the play is like the Duchess is recently widowed and she is in love with the lowly steward, a person who is not on a higher rank. Okay, his name is Antonio, and they are maintaining a very secret relationship. And this lady Duchess is getting pregnant by him, but they are keeping it very secret. And the dressing style of women during that time is very important because she can hide the pregnancy with the help of this kind of dresses and all. And actually, her brothers are very cruel people. One is incestuous, who is an incest. One is having a sexual connection or an attraction to the sibling. Okay, that is what we call incest or incestuous. So one of the brothers, Ferdinand, he is an incestuous one who had this kind of sexual attractions towards the Duchess. And the other one is Cardinal. Cardinal is a corrupt person. Okay, and they both asked one person, Bosola, Bosola is the spy, Bosola to spy over the Duchess because they wanted to know what she's doing, to whom she is having connection with, all those things. And but this Duchess doesn't know that Bosola is the spy of her brother, so she considers this person to be a confidant and explains everything to Bosola. And finally, what happens? These people, when they identified that the Duchess is in relationship with Antonio, and because again they will lose the kingdom, they will lose the power and all those things. The brothers, okay, if she is again in a relationship. So they are killing all these people. So the Duchess in between actually allegating some false accusations on Antonio and banishes him. Actually, that is for the sake of Antonio. She wants Antonio to escape from that place. That's why she is doing like that. But the Duchess, along with her two young children, okay, is getting they are getting killed. Antonio, with the elder child, is escaping from the place. This Ferdinand, I told you, no, he's incestuous. He's having this sexual attraction towards his sister. And when the Duchess of Malfi, she dies, and when that dead body is there, there is a very famous line by Ferdinand. Actually, we can't say it is famous, but it is notorious. Actually, that's an irritating line. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. She died young. Even at her dead body, this person is having that kind of a sexual arousal. Okay, so that's why he is saying cover her face as soon as possible, just cover her face. Still she is tempting me. Likewise, he is making a comment, and this expression or this statement or the sentence, this dialogue by Ferdinand is very popular. Usually we will get this kind of questions, who said, or in which play, something like that. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. She died young. Because she is very attractive. That is what he says. Later, Bosola turns against Ferdinand and Cardinal because identifying that they are not good. Actually, they were doing something against the Duchess and all. And the play ends with the main characters, that is Ferdinand and Cardinal, killing one another. That's how it ends. This is actually a nutshell of this play. Why I explained this play is like to create a curiosity in you for a further reading. Please do read the detailed summary. And if possible, you can even read the original text. This is such an interesting book, though it is full of violence and death and blood and all those things. This is still an interesting book. Okay, and many people consider, of course, this comes under the revenge tragedy category. But when we consider Duchess of Malfi as a revenge tragedy, there are some pitfalls in that. We have seen the features of a revenge tragedy, how a revenge tragedy should be. But there are some differences. This is an unconventional revenge tragedy, we can say. Very complicated, unconventional revenge tragedy because there is no clear avenger. In case of Hamlet and all those things, hope you remember the features. There will be a ghost or someone like that who is giving the information, and there will be a younger person, a male person who is taking revenge against the murderers. But here we can see there is no clear avenger. Okay, there is no such clear avenger. Of course, Ferdinand and Cardinal die at the end of the play, but still there is no clear avenger. Being the victim, the Duchess should be the avenger, though she does not take revenge. She can be the avenger. We can assume like that. Antonio should have avenged his wife's murder, but he does not. Antonio is not on the screen anymore. Then Bossolo is avenging his own crimes, not others' crimes. Then the villainous brothers seem to be taking revenge on their sister for betraying them with the marriage, because she hid the relationship with Antony and all those things. So we cannot identify who is the exact avenger, just like in the case of other revenge tragedies. If the Duchess is taken as the avenger, okay, to put it in the framework of a revenge tragedy, we can sometimes say, okay, the Duchess herself is the avenger. But in that case also, Avenger is a woman. That is not the conventional pattern of the revenge tragedy. Usually it will be a young man of the family. But one thing is that if Duchess is considered to be the Avenger, she's a woman. And the second thing is like she dies in between. Usually the Avenger will not die till the end. Until he takes a revenge, the Avenger will not die. But here, the Duchess, if she is considered to be the Avenger, she dies in between, and also she's a woman. These are the unconventional styles that we can see here. And yeah, these are the major unconventional or the factors that break the conventional revenge tragedy. Now coming to Webster's tragedy, and if we say the features of Webster's tragedy, we can see some pre-Gothic horror type elements are there. Dark vision of human nature. Okay, the human nature will have a positive side as well as a negative side. And in Hamlet and all such plays, of course, both the sides are revealed. Okay, both the sides. Of course, the highlight will be given to the positive side, but at the same time, the negative shade or the passive side of the person will also be revealed. But in the case of Webster's play, the dark vision of the human nature is very much exposed. And then a very melodramatic theatrical scenes are there. Life as pitiless, cruel, corrupt. Actually, that's a reality. Life is not a bed of roses. We know that, of course. But what are the cruelties or the pitiless side of the life and the people? That is what actually given importance in the works of Webster. Then, of course, I told you in the 20th century, even in the 20th century, many people discuss Webster and his plays. Rupert Brooke, the war poet. Okay, Rupert Brooke is one of the persons. In one of his essays, he has mentioned Webster. And T.S. Eliot in his poem Whispers of Immortality. That is a poem by T.S. Eliot. And Webster, T.S. Eliot says, Webster always saw the skull beneath the skin. That means the death and the cruelty and all these skin. Okay, he always saw. T.S. Eliot says Webster always saw the skull beneath the skin. This is what T.S. Eliot said about him. And so many other people like the French modernist Antonin Artaud, and then Bertolt Brecht, and so many other writers and critics of this period have mentioned John Webster and his place in different ways. So Webster is one of the important figures. Okay. So the next person is Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher. We have come across these names already, and I told him this is a combo. Okay, these people are kind of a combo. Fletcher and Beaumont, they wrote together. Of course, they had individual works of their own, but still Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher are a combination. They are like mostly collaborated and wrote so many works. And the lifespan, of course, Francis Beaumont, 1584 to 1616, and Fletcher, 1579 to 1625. Okay. And they excelled in comedies rather than tragedies and other works. Of course, they have written tragedies, but still they excelled in comedies and influenced by Shakespeare and Johnson, with Johnson, Ben Jonson. Okay. See, jointly they wrote almost 52 plays in collaboration. and superficial plays and full of spectacular incidents, stage effects they have given like that. So of course, majority of their works are comedies, so they have given importance to the stage effects and all those things. Fletcher, John Fletcher was actually the cousin of Giles Fletcher and Phineas Fletcher. They both were writers. We will see them after these, like after some 2 to 3 writers, we will see them also. So Fletcher's family is full of writers. Okay, he is the cousin brother of Giles Fletcher and Phineas Fletcher. And Francis Beaumont was a friend of Ben Jonson. Okay, he had a close acquaintance with Ben Jonson, to whom he wrote so many verse letters. For Ben Jonson, he has written so many verse letters. And he was also a poet, not only a playwright. Beaumont was a poet also. So that is what Beaumont and Fletcher's personal life is all about. And their works, the tragicomedies, that means it can either be a tragedy or a comedy. If it is a tragedy, it will be filled with so many comic elements. If it is a comic end, it will be having so many serious parts in it. Okay, that is what called tragicomedies. We have already discussed it. Philaster or love lies a bleeding, a hyphen bleeding. Okay, this is actually that is the subtitle. This is a tragic comedy written by Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher in 1610. And A King and Knocking. A King and Knocking was in 1611. Okay, this is a tragic comedy on the theme of incest. I told you incestual relationship, incest, what is incest and all. And tragicomedy on the theme of this incest, only to reveal at the end that these supposedly incestual brother and sisters are not brother and sister. But till the end of the play, the audience, the people, everyone will get the impression that they are a brother and a sister and they are in a relationship like that, incestual relationship like that. But at the end, it is revealed with a twist. It is revealed that they are not brother and sister. Okay. And Dryden, no, John Dryden. Dryden considered this particular play, A King and Knocking, to be the best work written by Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher. Then we can see the tragedy. Yeah, the Maid's Tragedy. That is a tragedy, of course. The Maid's Tragedy is written in 1611 again. And this is considered the best of their tragedies. Among the tragedies they have written, this is considered to be the best. It is also a sensational sex tragedy, like a husband discovers on the wedding night that his wife, Eviden is the name of the wife. Okay, she's the king's mistress, and this marriage is just a fake marriage, just to conceal the relationship between this lady and the king. And the husband is like heartbroken that day. He didn't know that he was just a puppet to maintain the relationship between this lady and the king. Okay, so this Evaden's brother awakens her conscience and murder the king. Like, and later the brother and all, this lady's brother comes and says like, no, what you are doing is not fair. You should be loyal to your husband and all those things. And this lady kills the king. And now she thinks like, okay, she can be with her husband. But what happens? Her husband does not welcome her back. And there is no other go. The king is already killed by her. And the husband is also not, ready to accept her anymore. So she stabs herself. This is actually the content. And The Maid's Tragedy is a combined work by Beaumont and Fletcher. Then Fletcher's play, Beaumont's play, of course, they have written in collaboration as well as individually. So Fletcher's plays, The Faithful Shepherdess. Okay, The Faithful Shepherdess is one of the works, 1608 to 9. He has written it during that period. And All is True. It is also called Henry VIII. It's a history play. Already we have other history plays with the same name, and that is why it is known with the other name, All is True, which was written in 1630. And then Beaumont's play, The Night of the Burning Vessel, okay, 1608. These are their individual works. So you should be like familiar with some of their individual works as well as collaborative work. But when you analyze the history of British literature, of course, Beaumont and Fletcher, the names come together. They are popular for their collaborations. And then comes Thomas Middleton. Okay, Thomas Middleton, another important figure during this time, 1580 to 1627 is the lifespan of this particular person. And he is one of the few Renaissance dramatists to achieve equal success in comedy, tragedy, masks, and pageants. Okay. Pageant means it's a public entertainment consisting of a colorful procession of people, which is very elaborate with very colorful costumes, all such things, or an outdoor performance of a historical event, whatever it is. It's just like mask. Okay, mask means it's a ball dance party or something like that, with all these wearing all these masks and all those things. So just like that, this pageant was also a procession like thing. Okay, very active, very colorful things, people will be involved. And he has written such pageants, masks, tragedy, comedy, and he received equal success in all these genres that he tried. He was the son of a bricklayer who had raised himself to the status of a gentleman. Though his father was a bricklayer, his father wanted his son to be a gentleman, and he raised Thomas Middleton in that way. And he wrote pamphlets on current issues, and he involved in the War of Theatres. Hope you remember the War of Theatres between Ben Jonson, Marston, Dekker, and all those people. So Thomas Middleton was also involved in that. Okay. And he too had many collaborations with people. T.S. Eliot, a student of Jacobean drama, actually admired Middleton. T.S. Eliot was saying Middleton was really superb, and Middleton is to be admired. Likewise, this person, T.S. Eliot, has made so many comments on Middleton. And coming to his comedies, A Chaste Maid in Cheapside, 1630, published in 1630. Okay, this is a city comedy. Hope you remember what is a city comedy. We have discussed city comedy and all those things in the last class. And this Chaste Maid in the Cheapside is considered to be Middleton's masterpiece work. Okay, masterpiece work. Then A Game at Chess. A Game at Chess was performed in 1624. Then other work is Michaelmas Term. Michaelmas Term was in 1604. This play is rich in irony. So many ironical expressions are there in Michaelmas Term. Okay, these are the comedies by Thomas Middleton. And then, sorry, tragedies. Actually, Middleton's masterpieces are his two tragedies. One is Women Beware of Women. Hope you might have heard this name. This is a very popular one, Women Beware of Women, 1657. And The Changeling. Okay, these are the very famous tragedies of this person. And The Witch is another tragedy. Okay. Actually, The Changeling is not exclusively written by Thomas Middleton. It is a collaboration with William Rowley. Okay, William Rowley and he together wrote this. But Women Beware of Women is the only tragedy that Middleton wrote by himself. Please keep it in your mind. Thomas Middleton has written one tragedy exclusively written by him. Okay, one tragedy, that is Women Beware of Women, 1657. That is the only tragedy by him, exclusively by him. There are two plots in this tragedy, and you can see it in detail. Okay, that is all about Thomas Middleton. And then comes Philip Massinger. Okay, Philip Massinger is, of course, a minor writer during that time, not that very popular. He was John Fletcher's assistant. Okay, Philip Mazinger was John Fletcher's assistant, and he too had many collaborations. That is why these people are not considered to be very popular or having an individual stand, because all of their works are in collaboration with others. And he is the one who got inspired by Fletcher and Beaumont. So the writing style, the pattern, the content, and everything, he tried to not exactly imitate, but he had inspiration or influence by these people. Okay, Fletcher and Beaumont. And his plays are A New Way to Pay Old Debts. A New Way to Pay Old Debts is one of the plays by Philip Mazinger. And The City Madam. The City Madam is another. Of course, from the title itself, you can understand what kind of a play it is, a city comedy. Social pretensions of a lady called Lady Frugal. Okay, she is full of having this social pretensions, unnecessary pretensions, and they are mocked and suitably punished. That is what the content of The City Madam. So we have seen like which were the top genres of this time, and city comedy was one among them. So all these writers tried city comedies in their area. Then comes John Ford. Okay, John Ford is another person, 1586 to 1614. That is the lifespan of John Ford, and he is also having collaborations with Dekker and Rowley, William Rowley and John Dekker. Uh, Actually, he had an interest in the psychology of frustrated and illicit love. That is one of the themes that he explored in his writings. Okay, the psychology of frustrated and illicit love. Why? What can be the reason for this illicit relationship, and how a person can be frustrated in the love life, and what is the psychology behind that? So this kind of explorations can be seen in the works of John Ford. And his major works are The Broken Heart. The Broken Heart, 1629. It is pity she's a whore. Okay, it is pity. And when you write this particular place name, see, I should not be written. Okay, you can put put an apostrophe, then T should be capital IS. It is pity she's a whore. This is how the title is. Okay, we have no right to change the spellings of the title and all. So that is another work. Of course, this is also a play which deals with the incestuous love of two people, and the after effects of that relationship. Then Perkin Warbeck, that is another play, that is a historical tragedy. Okay, Perkin Warbeck, that is a historical tragedy, and these are the major works written by John Ford. I'm just introducing these people as well as their important works. Of course, they have written other works, especially with collaboration with others. So if you want a detailed analysis, you can, find more on these people. Then comes James Shirley. Okay, James Shirley, 1596 to 1666. Okay, 1666. Annus Mirabilis. The year is having very much importance that we will see later during the Civil War period. We will see what is the importance of 1666. And Dryden has even written something on the 1666 year. Then actually the last of a great race, this is something Charles Lamb addressed to James Shirley. He is the last of a great race, because the Elizabethans were continuing with all their tragedies, and we can see by James Shirley it is waning, reducing. Okay, but then we cannot see such good writers in the context of plays. So that's why Charles Lamb, when he was analyzing the writers during the 16th and 17th century, especially dramatists, he was saying James Shirley is the last of a great race. Then he has written many tragedies, tragicomedies, comedies, poems, etc. And his best tragedy is The Cardinal. Okay, The Cardinal in 16 41, and the popular comedy is The Lady of Pleasure, 1637. I'm telling a number of writers and and a lot of works by them. Of course, don't get tensed. Okay, don't worry if you cannot remember all these names, but definitely if you go through these lectures again and again, definitely you will get okay. When you listen to the Cardinal, okay, Cardinal is by Shirley. Shirley is like Lamb told no about Shirley. He's the last of the great race. Okay, something like that. Likewise, you can connect. But on the first glance, it is not at all possible to remember or identify all these works and writers. Don't get tense. But at the same time, you should be familiar with, I'm sure, very sure that you may not be familiar with all these writers like Ford, Shirley. Though you might have heard these names, it may not be possible for you to remember all these writers. So first of all, what is important is like place these writers to the particular age. Okay, when we say James Shirley or William Rowley or Webster or someone like that, you should identify that this is a person who lived during the late 16th or early 17th century, or especially they had their writings during the Jacobean period. Okay, that is what the prime, that is what at the prime importance. Okay, you have to identify like that, and later on you can try remembering the works of them, and if something very important about that particular person, then you can go on that way. That's it. Okay, don't get tensed with a lots of informations like this. So with Shirley, we can wind up the playwrights of this particular period. And of course, when we say the Jacobean period, when we cover the Jacobean period, of course, we have to see the early 17th century poetry also. Okay. Of course, we were discussing the important figures when we were discussing the Jacobean period, like Wyatt, Sydney, Spencer. All these people were continued writing during this time also. Okay, and the Elizabethan style was continuing, but at the same time, some new styles. Okay, some new introductions, some new emergence were also happening, and one among them is Cavalier poets. Cavalier poets, you might have heard this name, Cavalier poets. Actually, they are the poets who got inspiration from Ben Jonson. Okay, they are known as Cavalier poets, the sons of Ben, the tribe of Ben, all these names, because they are completely influenced by or inspired by the writer Ben Jonson. Actually a light witty tone, that is what the highlight of their works, and careless elegance. Of course their poems are very elegant, but that is not a purposeful elegance, or okay, we have to write it this way with this kind of an elegance. It was not like that, but still a careless elegance was also there in the works of the Cavalier poets. In course of time we will discuss these writers in detail. Then another one is metaphysical poets. We have discussed what is metaphysical poetry and what are the features and all those things when we were discussing John Donne. And of course, for the metaphysical poets, the inspiration was John Donne. For the Cavalier poets, the inspiration was Ben Jonson. And for the metaphysical poets, the inspiration was Donne. During that time, they were not categorized as metaphysical or Cavalier. It was later identified and categorized and given these particular names. And coming to the metaphysical poetry or poets, we can see the intellectual complexity. Hope you remember the poems of Donne, and the religious images to human love, canonization. Hope you remember the lovers are compared to the hermits. Okay, the sannyasis, the hermits, they were compared to the lovers. And then that is something very unconventional. We cannot even think of such a comparison. Then irregular meter, elaborate images, unlikely comparisons. Again, in Valediction Forbidding Morning by John Donne, we have seen the lovers are compared to the compass, the two legs of the compass. One is at the center and one is rotating. Hope you remember. and everyday language. So these are the major features of the metaphysical poet. So these two types of or groups of poets were also emerging with the inspiration of Ben Jonson and John Donne during this particular period. And then the Elizabethan, I told you, no, the Elizabethans were continuing their writing lyrics, satires, Petrarchan sonnets, then allegories, pastoral poetry, religious poetry, all these were continuing like that. There is no such sudden differences. It was continuing. Okay, so all these writers with all their different types of poetry were continuing to write, continued to write during this time, and some more poets were also there. And let us just have a glance on the other poets or the, we can't say minor poets, of course, but they had their own identity. First is Mary Sidney Herbert, Countess of Pembroke, which is a very familiar name to you. Of course, she is the sister of Philip Sidney, for whom Sidney wrote Arcadia. Okay, Arcadia, and he was staying with his sister, and he wrote Arcadia for her. It was dedicated to Mary Sidney Herbert, and she was one of the first English women to make a reputation for herself as a writer. Okay, one of the first English women writers. She got an independent identity, a reputation that she's a writer. And she was a notable literary patron. She patronized many people, and she is the one who published Sidney's works. Okay, Sidney's works after his death. And coming to the works of Mary Sidney Herbert, we can say like the Psalms of David. Okay, the Psalms of David, then the Tragedy of Antony. The Tragedy of Antony, that is a closet drama. These are the two important works to her credit. And she's not only the sister of Sidney, and she is also the aunt of the poetess Lady Mary Roth. We will see who is Lady Mary Roth later. Actually, Sidney and Mary Sidney, they are siblings, and their niece, okay, one of their nieces is also a writer, and that is Lady Mary Roth. So that is what all about Mary Sidney. What is very important about Mary Sidney Herbert, or the Countess of Pembroke, is she was a patroness who patronized many people, and she was one of the first English women to establish a reputed identity as a writer of her own among the women. And she has written these works also, and she is the one who published the works of Philip Sidney. Okay, then other writer is Samuel Daniel. Samuel Daniel is a person who has written many poems. He's the son of a music master. So he combined music to his works very much. Okay. And he was encouraged and patronized by the Countess of Pembroke. I told you, no, Mary Sidney Herbert, she was patronizing many people. And Samuel Daniel is one of the persons who was under the patronage of Mary Sidney Herbert. Actually, Ben Jonson was not that impressed by the works of Samuel Daniel. And Ben Jonson commented like this: he's an honest man, but no poet. Okay, he's an honest man, but no poet. Sometimes you may get a question like an honest man, but no poet. Who commented on whom? Or Ben Jonson commented on whom? Or on whom? Sorry, who commented on Samuel Daniel like this? Likewise, you may get questions. Okay, so it is Samuel Daniel, an honest man, but no poet. And this is actually a comment by Ben Jonson, not a public comment or something like that. It's personally Ben Jonson's comment. Delia is his important work, and when we say Samuel Daniel, it's easy to connect with his work, Daniel Delia. Okay, that is how I learned. I remembered this particular name. That's why I remember. So this is a sonnet cycle. Okay, this is a sonnet cycle addressed to Delia, and that is why the name is given like Delia. Then the complaint of Rosalind, that is a romance. Then Cleopatra is another work, that is a tragedy written in classical style. Then the Civil Wars. The Civil Wars is actually in 8 books. This is not a single book. This is in 8 books. And this is actually a historical poem. Of course, this is a poem, but this is a historical poem on the War of Roses. Hope you remember the War of Roses earlier happened. And based on this, sorry, War of Roses, Samuel Daniel has written The Civil Wars, which is consisting of 8 books in total. Then Musophilus is another work. This is a long philosophical poem. Okay, long philosophical poem. The Queen's Arcadia is an imitation of Italian pastoral drama. Then the Defense of Rhyme is a critical work. Okay, these are the major works to Samuel Daniel's credit. See, when you analyze the works of a single person, you can see a sonnet cycle, a romance, a tragedy, a historical poem, a philosophical poem, okay, imitation of a pastoral drama. So all these are written by a single person. So all these genres were popular even during that time. Another person is Michael Drayton. Michael Drayton expands from 1563 to 1631. Okay, and his works, many of his works, or all his works got published between 1591 to 1630. A long period actually. Okay, 1691 to 1591 to 1630. So first of all, his work is Idea, the Shepherd's Garland. Okay, Idea, the Shepherd's Garland. Actually, this includes 9 eclogues. And of course, the influences Spenser. Spenser's Shepherd's Calendar. Okay, Spenser's Shepherd's Calendar is the influence for writing this particular work, that is Idea, the Shepherd's Garland. Then Endymion and Phoebe, okay, is another work, and this is an Apollyon. Then Piers Gaveston, Matilda, The Baron's Wars, Sir John Oldcastle, The Legend of Great Cromwell, Poems, Lyric and Pastoral, Polly Albion. It has 2 parts. It was in 1612 and 1622. The Battle of Agincourt, which is comparatively popular one. The Miseries of Queen Margaret, then Nymphaea. Again, I'm telling you, don't get confused or frightened by seeing all these lists. These are just lists. You will come to know, if no one can remember all these works. Okay, this is written by Drayton in this year. We cannot identify like that. Okay, that is not possible. But still, you can continuously listen to this thing, and when a particular work comes to your mind, then you can connect it with that. So what is important is what kind of a person Drayton was and what type of works he has written. All these are very important. Okay, and yeah. You can see like minute, you can go for minute details of all these works if you want to go for this person in detail. Okay, that is like, for example, Nymphaea. Take this work, Nymphaea. Nymphaea is a mock heroic series of fairy poems. Okay, mock heroic version of or series of fairy poems. Then the Miseries of Queen Margaret, if you consider that, that is what is very important about that work is like Holinshed's Chronicles. No, that is the source for this particular poem. Okay, then the Battle of Agincourt is a historical poem. Likewise, the basic ideas can be remembered, or you can try remembering all those things. again, on the first glance, on the first hand experience, it is not possible to remember all these things. So don't get afraid or confused on this. Okay. Then no Shakti, that is not necessary. Actually, you have to go through all the works if that person is very popular, because we have to do some smart works also. Okay, we have to do some smart works. We know, right, who are important and who are considered to be at the second layer of importance and all those things. So if you take John Milton or Spencer or Sydney or some people like that, definitely you have to go through all the works, at least a gist of what their work is all about. Okay, that is very important, because these people are very much important. And definitely if you appear for an entrance exam or some competitive exams or something like that, people will be focusing on that kind of people. This will be like minor questions which will be for like very small percentage of marks. So that is how we do smart work in the case of competitive examinations. So what is important is you should be just familiar with all these works of all such people. Okay, Drayton, Samuel Daniel, or Mary Sidney and such people, but you should be clear about the works of the major or the prominent writers. That is why we have done Shakespeare in detail, Chaucer in detail, Spencer in detail, Sidney in detail. We have almost covered all their works. That you can see. That do not, don't go into so much of detail, but just understand what it is. And nowadays, like when I said Webster's Duchess of Malfi, I gave importance to Duchess of Malfi. Okay, rather than the White Devil, I gave importance to Duchess of Malfi, because it is Duchess of Malfi from which we usually get more and more questions. And when Ferdinand's that dialogue comes, that is very important. So we just discussed that. So likewise, you have to filter and study. Okay, this is just, you have to be familiar with these kinds of writers as well as their works. That then comes Sir John Davis. Okay, John Davis is another person. John Davis's famous works are Orchestra, 1596, which is a philosophical poem. Then Nos Tapsum. Nos Tapsum is a long didactic poem discussing the vanity of human knowledge and the importance of cultivating the human soul and all those things. It's a very long poem. So these are the works by Sir John Davis. So such a writer was there during that time. This is what actually very important. And Thomas Campion is another person. He combined poetry with music. He gave very much importance to music, the musicality of the poems. Book of Eyes is one of the works by him. This is a song book. Of course, I told you, no, he connects music with poetry. That's why. Then Observations in the Art of English Poesy is another work by Thomas Campion. That is what actually about him. Then Emilia Lanier. Hope you remember this name. I don't know whether you can identify this particular lady. Actually, she is one of the earliest female professional poets. Okay, earliest female professional poets. It should be poets, not poet. Like acknowledged, she got acknowledged as a professional poet during that time, and she's the fourth woman in England to publish a book of original poetry. Okay, fourth woman. I told you Mary Herbert is one of the persons who established her reputation as a writer. So just like that, Emilia Lanier is also one of the women writers who established her identity and published an original work of poetry. Okay, this is one important work. This is Salvius Rex Judarium. I don't know whether it should be pronounced in that way. Actually, when it translated to English, Hail God, King of the Jews. Okay, that is what the translation of this particular work, and this is comparatively what to say, a popular work by Emilia Lanier in NIT's Trichy's syllabus. This is something included. Okay. And why I asked you whether you are familiar with this lady, because she is one of the, we think she can be a person whom Shakespeare addressed as Dark Lady. When we were discussing the sonnets of Shakespeare, we have seen that, okay, he has addressed his sonnets to both Mr. W.H. as well as a Dark Lady. We don't know the identity of both these persons, but we have some assumptions, some speculations. This can be the lady or this can be the man. So Emilia Lanier is one among them. We sometimes think like she can be the Dark Lady. Okay, that's why I asked you whether you remember her or not. Then comes the other poets of that time, Phineas Fletcher. Hope you remember this name. When I said John Fletcher, I told two of his cousin brothers are also there in the literary scenario, and that is Phineas Fletcher. The Purple Island, Locusts, and Apollonists. Okay, these are the works by him. Then another person, Giles Fletcher. These two people are brothers, and they are the cousin brothers of John Fletcher. Okay, Christ's Victory and Triumph is the famous work by Giles Fletcher. Then another writer is Elizabeth Cary. Elizabeth Cary, or Lady Falkland. She is a poet, translator, and a dramatist, not only a poet. Okay, The Tragedy of Mariam, the Fair Queen of Jewry. This is one of the works by Cary, okay, Elizabeth Cary. Actually, Elizabeth Cary had a very sad life, personal life, okay. She was married to Sir Henry Cary and later Lord Falkland, and they had 11 children. Okay, but her husband abandoned her to poverty in 1626 and denied her access to her children, her own children. And when she made public her conversion to Catholicism, that is what actually infuriated the husband. She converted to Catholicism, and this made problems in their life. And when she tried to get access to her children, she was threatened with imprisonment, and she was died of consumption of loneliness and want. So it was a very terrible life that she had. And this tragedy of Mariam, the fair queen of Jewry, is the first. This is the play that reflects Carrie's own life. We can identify from the title itself. Okay, her own life, and this is the first non-play in English by a woman. That is something very important. Elizabeth Cary. That is what the significance of Elizabeth Cary, The Tragedy of Mariam, the Fair Queen of Jewry, is the first play written by a woman. To our knowledge, okay, there can be anonymous works before, but still. Then the history of Edward II, that is also another work by Elizabeth Cary. Actually, this history of Edward II is the first non-English history play by a woman again. Okay, first non-English history play by a woman. So that is how Elizabeth Cary is important. And Carrie's biography is actually written by one of her daughters, and that is how we know about the personal details and the sufferings that she endured in her life. Then comes Lady Mary Roth. Hope you remember, who is the niece of Sidney and Mary Sidney Herbert. Okay, Philip Sidney's niece, Mary Sidney Herbert's niece, and the Countess of Montgomery's Urania. That is the one of the important works by Lady Mary Roth. It's a romance. Then Pamphylia to Amphilanthus. Pamphylia to Amphilanthus is another work, and this is a sonnet sequence. Okay, sonnet sequence by a woman in English. The first sonnet sequence, just like Elizabeth Cary, this is the first sonnet sequence written by a woman. We have seen like Sidney Spencer, all these people, they have written so many sonnet sequences. But this is actually a sonnet sequence written by a woman. Then we will wind up the Jacobean period writers with the prose writers. Okay. Prose writers. There are many prose writers during this time. Of course, we have seen the King James Bible, which was a milestone. Okay, that happened during this time, 1611. Don't forget the year of this King James Bible. Okay, 1611, frequently asked question. 1611 is something very important when the King James Bible or the authorized version of Bible came. Then Francis Bacon is there, we have seen. And let us just see the other writers. Nicholas Breton. Okay, Nicholas Breton, 1545 to 1626 is another person. He has written a number of prose tracts and also wrote the satires and pastoral poetry. He's not only a prose writer, and he was also patronized by the Countess of Pembroke, who is that Mary Herbert. Then his important work is Fantastics. Okay, Fantastics in 1604. It's a series of short prose pictures of the months. Okay, the Christian festivals, the hours, how each month will be. That is what he has written in Fantastics. Then, then comes a very important figure, Robert Burton. Robert Burton and the Anatomy of Melancholy. I don't know whether you are already familiar with this work. If you are not familiar with this work, please be familiar. It is not easy to read this work because it's such a bulky one. Okay, very big one. And this is Anatomy of Melancholy. This particular work is written under the pseudonym Democritus Jr. If you can remember, please remember, Democritus Jr. is the pseudonym under which Robert Burton wrote the Anatomy of Melancholy at first. This is a very satirical, pessimistic, misanthropic tone. Okay, it's like Anatomy of Melancholy. How melancholy is there? How the anatomy? He is dissecting melancholy and he is analyzing the melancholic types, the religious melancholy, the personal melancholy, the love melancholy, likewise. Okay, and employs the technique of self contradiction. Okay, how each person is having this melancholic nature and all those things. That is what actually the content. But this Anatomy of Melancholy is still popular, very popular, and that is one of the important works by Robert Burton. Robert Burton is known for this work, synonymously identified with this work. Okay. And he has also given so many character writings, a brief prose descriptions of a person or a type or something like that. Okay. Then another person is Joseph Hall. Joseph Hall, 1574 to 1656. And he was the Bishop of Norwich and devotional writer. Okay. Joseph Hall is a devotional writer and wrote many controversial religious works also. Okay, and this Virginiarum is a satire. Okay, this is a satirical works, and the characters of virtues and vices is another work by Hall. Then comes Thomas Overbury. Thomas Overbury is also a prose writer during that time. Okay, a Jacobean poet as well as essayist. He was a poet also, very minor poet. And he had inseparable friendship with Robert Carr. He was a politician and King James's favorite. So these people were politically influential, and A Wife is one of the works by Thomas Overbury. Okay. Actually, Wife is depicting the virtues that a young man should demand of a woman. Okay, what is a young man demanding from a woman? That is what the content of A Wife. Then comes John Earl. John Earl, 1601 to 1655, and he was the Bishop of Salisbury, and he was a royalist, and he was the tutor to Prince Charles. Okay, tutor to Prince Charles, that is Charles II, the Restoration King. This microcosmography is one of the important works by John Earl. Okay, so with that, almost all the prominent or important or notable figures of Jacobean period come to an end. These are the prose writers. Already we have seen the important figures earlier, okay, like Francis Bacon, the King James Bible, and all those things. And in case of poetry also, we have seen the important ones like Sidney Spencer and all those things. And now in this class, what we have seen is the minor or comparatively less popular writers, okay, the prose writers, then the poets. These are the poets of that time. Then we have seen the playwrights of that time: Shirley, Ford, Philip Massinger, then Middleton, Francis Beaumont and Fletcher, John Webster. All these people were John Webster. We cannot say a minor playwright or something like that, but still. And in the previous class also, we have seen Dekker, Marston, and other writers, Haywood, Ben Jonson, Shakespeare, and all those things. So with this, we can wind up the Jacobean period, and tomorrow we'll be starting the period of civil war. Okay, the period of civil war, that is extending from 1642 to 1660. So how the Puritans took over the power and the closure of the theaters until the Restoration. Okay, till the Restoration. The king is beheaded during this time. Charles I, and then Oliver Cromwell comes to the power. Then finally in 1660, this person Charles II was asked to come back, and he is ascending the throne. This is what actually happening between 1642 to 1660, and that is known as the period of civil war. And we will see the figures like Milton. Okay, and such writers come at this particular point, and we will try to finish it as soon as possible, but still we have to see that in details. So I think we can wind up today's session with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.